Okay, this is section 7.5, which is called, it's trigonometry using the unit circle. So up until this point, we have used right triangles to define our trig functions. For us, when we started out, sine of an angle was the opposite side over the hypotenuse. That's a right angle. So sine of this degree measure would be opposite over hypotenuse. And we had cosine defined as adjacent over hypotenuse. Now, tangent we defined as opposite over adjacent, but it's because we really define tangent as sine over cosine. So when we put in opposite over hypotenuse divided by adjacent over hypotenuse, the h's cancel and we get O over A. But tangent, this is what we're going to use as our definition for tangent. Secant is 1 over cosine. Cosecant is 1 over sine. And cotangent is 1 over tangent. What we're going to do now is there's another way to define sine and cosine, and it has to do with the unit circle. So a unit circle is a circle whose radius is 1. So that would put this point 1, 0. This would be 0, 1. Minus 1, 0. And 0, minus 1. So this would be the unit circle, and we define sine as y and cosine is x. Try that again. Okay, these are definitions. There's not like a mathematical reason necessarily that we call it, that we have it this way. It's a definition. So recall that back in section 7.1 we said that a radian we measured radians by the opening of the central angle and the arc length. So if this is 1, a circle of radius 1, then 1, when we hit 1 centimeter or 1 unit along here of the arc length, that angle is 1 radian. Okay? So if I start with a unit circle whose radius is 1, I'm going with a unit circle here. When I travel to when I get over here to like 1.3, so when this distance is 1.3, that angle measure is 1.3. Theta in radians is 1.3. Okay, so that's how radians work. And then there's an xy point associated with that point on the edge of the circle, and we have sine theta equals y and cosine theta equals x. Tangent cosecant, secant, and cotangent all have the same definition. So the implications of that, so here's my unit circle. We said this was 1, 0, 0, 1, minus 1, 0, and 0, minus 1. So here, this corresponds to a theta, an angle of 0 radians. So when we have sine of 0, that corresponds to the point 1, 0, and remember sine is equal to y, so that gives us sine 0 equals 0, while cosine of 0 equals 1, because that's what x is. Now right here, this angle is pi over 2. All the way around is 2 pi. We're 1/4 of the way around, so this angle is pi over 2. And so sine of pi over 2 is, there's the thing, y, which is, for this point, 1. And cosine of pi over 2 is the x-coordinate, 0. If I go halfway around the circle, that is an angle of pi. So sine of pi, we look at the y, that's 0. Cosine of pi is minus 1. And then 3/4 of the way around is 3 pi over 2. That's the x-coordinate, or the y-coordinate, that's minus 1. And cosine 3 pi over 2 is the y-coordinate, which is 0. Okay, so if I choose a point on the edge of this unit circle, and the point has an x-coordinate of 0.2 and a y-coordinate of the square root of 0.96, then sine of theta would be the square root of 0.96, and cosine of theta would be 0.2, because that's y and that's x. And so that is how we would use the idea of the unit circle to evaluate sine and cosine. And tangent would be sine over cosine. Cosecant would be the reciprocal of sine. Secant would be the reciprocal of cosine. And cotangent would be the reciprocal of tangent. Whoops. Got down too low. All right. Now, one nice thing about the unit circle, and remembering that sine theta equals y and cosine theta equals x, is that y is positive in quadrants 1 and quadrants 2, which is where sine is positive. And x is positive in quadrants 1 and quadrants 4, which is where cosine is positive. Oops, Q4. And so since x is negative in quadrants 2 and 3, cosine is negative in quadrants 2 and 3. Y is negative in quadrants 3 and 4, so sine is negative in quadrants 3 and 4. The ratio of x over y in quadrants 1 and 3 are positive, so that's where tangent's positive. And then x over y, the ratio is negative in quadrants 2 and 4, so tangent's negative in quadrants 2 and 4. All right, so that's the, right now the most useful thing of the unit circle is, and what makes the unit circle so hard to use is that we have to measure along, like, we have to measure this distance to figure out, you know, what our angle is. So that can be challenging. So the unit circle, as far as actually using it to find values of sine and cosine, is very difficult. However, we can use the ideas of the unit circle, the fact that sine is y and cosine is x, to remember things like sine is positive in quadrants 1 and 2, cosine is positive in quadrants 1 and 4, and we can also use it to figure out these quadrant angles. So anyway, that's for quadrant, for unit circle.